Oh dear. Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. That was good. That was good. That was good. That was... Okay.
Sean, bring back the 80s, man.
Bring back the 80s. Bring back the 80s. Do you know, actually the numbers were going up, and then the longer that they played, then the numbers went back down again. So maybe that wasn't a great idea. They can watch it later on. Welcome to the big show.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I feel very, very honoured.
This is probably the biggest show you've ever been on in your career.
Yeah. This is my biggest audience ever.
Well, tonight, folks, let me introduce him. He's Roger Beaumont, the Chief Executive, the CEO of the New Zealand Bankers Association. And tonight, I'm going to be asking him the big questions, the hard questions, the questions that every journalist in New Zealand has been too scared to... No, I'm not. He's a mate, so I'm just going to have to get with him.
Oh, that's a relief, mate. You had me going. I thought I was going to be Kim Hild for a moment.
but I am going to do him justice and actually do the formal introduction, so you know who he is. So Roger Beaumont, the CEO of New Zealand Bankers Association. Roger leads the NZBA's commitment as the industry's voice to support a strong and stable banking system that benefits New Zealand households, businesses, and the economy. Roger joined NZBA January 29th. Prior to this role, Roger spent 7 years in executive leadership roles in the banking industry in New Zealand and in Australia. And the early part of his career was predominantly in the broadcast and digital media industry, where he was somewhat of a legend. But that's an entirely different show that we may have another hour and a half on with some legendary tales. But anyway, Roger commenced his career in radio journalism. That's right, damn good journo too. Before moving into marketing roles in both radio and television, he then applied his marketing and communication skills to the banking industry, and he now leads the industry body in New Zealand. Welcome, Roger.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks so much.
Very honoured given the roll call of guests that you've been having. You know, clearly it was a dead night, and you were scraping the barrel and got me. So
not at all. Anyway. Not at all. I'm really glad that you that you've joined us tonight. So can you, before we get into it, you've had these amazing roles in your career, but can you explain to us what your role is now in this in banking, and how it all works, and what your responsibilities are and stuff?
Yeah, so simply, we're a group. NZBA is a group that represents all the registered banks in New Zealand, 17 members in total. So we are the voice of the industry when it's appropriate to have an industry-wide point of view on something that might not be specific to a particular brand or an organisation, where we need to talk as a collective voice and have a clear opinion on something. So it might be talking to government, it might be talking to ministers, it might be talking to regulators like the Reserve Bank or the Financial Markets Authority, and of course talking to media as well, so that there are things that the industry needs to convey, and top rating shows such as yourself, for example.
I love it.
Yeah. 7 sharp. What? Yeah.
seven who?
So I actually turned them down for you tonight. I thought, no, I'm going to go with the numbers.
So go with the large numbers. Hey, we've got 12 people tuned in right now, so this is pretty massive night for us. Hey, so can you, obviously, and I know that you've been working bloody ridiculous hours, like many people through this period. Can you tell us, what have banks been doing to support people through this time? Because you know the banks do cop a bit of flack from people,
of course.
But they also do a hell of a lot of good work as well. So, like, what have they been doing?
Well, look, banks have been working with their customers. We encouraged customers very, very early on when COVID first hit the headlines that if you're impacted by this or you're affected in some way, get in touch with your bank, and it's much better that you talk to your bank sooner rather than later. It's much better you get ahead of it and be proactive and talk to your bank and say, look, I'm going to be reducing the hours that I'm employed for, or my business is tourism related and it's highly impacted, so we're going to see a bit of a fall off in revenue. We encourage people to get in touch with their bank, and banks actually want to make things better for customers. It's in no bank's interest for a customer to fall over or their business to fall over. And you know, the worst case scenario is to say force a mortgagee sale on someone's house. No bank wants that, because one, you're not going to get a good price anyway. Two, it's a terrible situation for everybody involved. So banks would much rather work with customers and try and fix problems or create things that they can do to help people get through a crisis period. And that's what we're in right now with COVID. So the sorts of things, I'll answer your question eventually, sorts of things that banks are doing. If you take two parts, personal customers and business customers. So with personal customers, you can, if you're impacted by COVID-19, you can take a reduction in your mortgage payments, and that might mean that you just go interest only and you don't pay any of the principal back, or you do both. You go interest only and take a reduction in your principal payback just to give yourself the wriggle room, or you might completely defer your mortgage repayments for up to 6 months. Now, up to over 100,000 New Zealanders have taken one of those two options just in the last 6 weeks or 7 weeks, and that's phenomenal. So that's a huge amount of administrative work for banks to work through and to actually put all that into place to make it happen. But that's just one example of what banks are doing to support personal customers.
So how do they decide on the 6 month thing, as far as not interest only, but hey, we'll just give you a rest? What's sort of been the general criteria? Do you have to be in a worse situation to get it, or do you have to be in a better situation? Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, if you've been affected, you can choose. So pretty much, but banks have, encouraged people to, actually, you're better if you can afford to keep paying something. You're better to keep doing that, because that'll just chew away at your mortgage. So it would be if you're severely impacted. So say you're in a tourism business that your revenue has just gone to zero, and you've got no other income or opportunities, then a 6 month deferral in that scenario is probably the best thing for you. And what that does is just, it gives you peace of mind. It buys you some time in order to be able to sort out your affairs, re-strategize what you might be doing for the business to actually progress it forward, and just catch your breath and not have that stress of, I don't think I can make the mortgage payment this week. And because for most of us, our mortgage is our biggest single outgoing payment, right? It's the biggest regular commitment that we have. So if you can buy people some peace of mind and relief from having to worry about that, so they can worry about sorting out other things in their life, that's a huge advantage. So that's just one example of the things banks have been doing. On the business side, we've been doing new lending, like $7.2 billion in the last 6 or 7 weeks of new lending to businesses. That's a lot of money. I mean, that's more than you would earn in a year, Sean. And okay, I shouldn't have revealed that. That is inappropriate.
Yeah.
Sorry. But that's a lot of money to actually help businesses get through and carry on and continue on. Restructuring loans, the same as personal customers, deferring loans, repayments, or reducing repayments. All those sorts of things.
Do you think you could like pull a few strings for me and fix me up a loan with one of the banks? Was that? No.
I know people. I know people.
Do you know that you know that you've got quite a niche audience when everybody is going, "How are you, Roger?"
Who is this guy?
Yes, I was about to write the same thing. Well, there's a blast from the past. That's from Ralph Van Dyke. Ralph,
g'day, Ralph.
Van Dyke.
I owe you pizza, Ralph. I owe you pizza.
How do you know Ralph?
We went to school together in Christchurch.
Oh, Ralph was I went into C93 and I said, "Hey, can I want to be an announcer?" And they said, "We think you should be a copywriter," probably because I stumbled all over. And Ralph taught me how to write ads.
What a great mentor to have. What a great guy to take you on as his wingman.
Stephen McIver just said, because I called it the Big Show just for the first time, and he said, "Big Show, careful, mate." I think he's got some.
Yeah, you're getting ahead of yourself there, buddy.
Yeah, Josh Thompson is watching. He's a comedic legend. Mike Brunel. Krista
Mike Brunell.
Yeah, Mike Brunell. We interviewed him the other day.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I
say
hope
I
he
said
would have
we.
rated better than me.
Oh, ratings were massive,
I
massive.
can imagine. Off the chart, Brunell. Yeah.
And Peter Elliott. Oh, Peter Elliott's like the
Nice.
actor and the fishing.
He is. He's a very nice man.
Have
Very,
you
very
met him?
nice man.
Have you met him
Yeah.
before?
Yep.
I've never met
Good
him.
bloke.
Yeah,
He needs to. You need to represent him.
I think I should. I think I should.
Should. I think you should.
Peter, can you respond to that, please?
Get his people to talk to your people.
Peter, can you get Mike Brunell says that you haven't aged a bit.
Oh, what a charmer.
Peter Elliott is also incredibly good voiceover. Not just a great actor, very good voiceover. Okay, we need to get back on track with this show because we've got 11 people watching, which is actually, I've got to say, very, very good ratings at this point. Because what happens, people watch it later. They watch it later. They're watching a couple of other shows at the moment. Where do you think things are heading? I mean, I suppose you've got to be careful answering this, but like, I had Cam Bagri on the other day, and I really like Cam. I think he's bloody great. And I said, you know, how about house prices? And he reckons 10 to 15% drop over the next 12, 18 months. Are you guys allowed to sort of have a position on that, or do you have to read a bit careful?
I'm not an economist, so I'm not gonna make a guess. But what I can do is sort of have a sense of what other people are saying, and Cam's probably at the upper end of what people think the fall or a softening will be. You've got so many factors at play. So you take a market like Queenstown, for example, which is quite unique. And that's obviously the tourism capital of New Zealand, and that's going to be severely impacted in the next few months as the international tourists just simply aren't there. So what flow-on effect that has on the Queenstown economy and the flow-on to housing, for example, will be interesting to watch. But I think, Queenstown or a market like that might take a disproportionate hit to, say, somewhere like Auckland. And this is just my personal view, just to be really clear. Somewhere like Auckland, where, if it's a good house in a good area, it's probably going to hold up okay. And given the market growth that Auckland has seen in the last few years, it's probably, a softening isn't going to be that significant, for most people. But look, anything can happen. And, if you're entering the housing market, certainly now is a good time to buy. I have this thing, I really love buying houses in winter because, one, you don't have the hype of summer and spring sales, but two, you see houses at their absolute worst, right? Yeah. So if you like the place in winter, you're going to love it in summer.
Hey, if you do have any questions, guys, because we've actually got quite a big following tonight for this show.
We're up to 12.
It's massive. We do actually get hundreds of people watching this later on, and I'm not being defensive. It's just the truth. If you have got any questions for Roger, he's the main man when it comes to banking. It's his job. He's the CEO of the New Zealand Bankers Association. So
you've always talked me up, Shawnee. I love it. Thank you so much.
You're a great guy. You're a great guy too.
I remember when you first turned up at 2XS in Palmerston North, and Jeremy Miller said, "Oh, we've hired a new copywriter, and he's from Timaru." And I'd grown up in Christchurch, you see, and I thought, Timaru, well, he must be all right then if he's a mainlander. And then this young 12-year-old boy turned up at the station, and I thought, who's this work experience kid that's come in? And it was Sean, and you were there. You'd come straight from the airport. And you were carrying one of those, I'll never forget this, you were carrying one of those old school leather suitcases.
That's right.
That, your parents probably took on their honeymoon. And your entirely world's possessions were in that suitcase. And you were wearing a lovely home knitted jumper that Mrs. O'Neill had clearly made for you to get through the South Canterbury winters. And you had arrived in the big smoke of Palmerston North. And I looked at you and I thought, you're a good bugger and you're going to do really well. And look at you now.
Well, thanks, Roger. That ends the interview. That was great. Thanks. That's very kind of you. So what is your thoughts, Rog, on where New Zealand is heading then through this over the next 12, 18 months? I mean, I know anything can happen, but is there a few things that you can shed some light on and where you see things?
I think it's going to be tough, and I think the toughness that we've endured has kind of been married with just the sheer shock and adrenaline of the changes that we've been observing, and getting into level 4 and then down to level 3 and then woohoo, level 2 on Thursday. It's been a massive shock to most people, and a total change to the way you've lived your lives. We've all lived our lives. So you've had that going on, and simultaneously you've had really challenging economic factors at play, particularly with small businesses who have been really struggling because they haven't been able to trade. And then you layer into that, if you're a small business in a particular area like hospitality or retail or tourism, for all the obvious reasons, you've got an extra whammy on top of that. So I think actually, as we come out of the various levels, the reality of the economic impact is only going to hit us then, when we actually start to see the shops that don't reopen at all because of what's happened. And that is very sadly, that is going to be the case. And I think, the flow-on effect for the economy is going to take months, if not years, to recover from, and that's going to be tough. And I think it's going to be tough until the international long-haul flights open up again properly, without having to quarantine at either end, because tourism is as big as dairying for as an export earner for this country, and we all know the significance of dairying. And tourism, I think, is one of those things that we kind of all take for granted a wee bit as Kiwis. And it's you see lots of tourists, but we don't tend to go to the tourist spots when the tourists are there necessarily. And at worst, it means that it's a bit hard getting a car park at peak season in some areas, but it just kind of happens and it goes on. But man, that is a monster in terms of the contribution it makes to the economy. So I think that particular sector is really going to have a hit, and that's why it's very, very important that Kiwis get out and support our fellow Kiwis and go on holiday here in New Zealand and spend the money at your local restaurants and in your local shops, and really contribute in any way you can to the economy and help those businesses actually make up for the shortfall. And I know I've been a bit doom and gloom in what I just said, but actually that's the real opportunity for us to show ourselves, to support our fellow Kiwis and actually contribute to the economy in our own way, and as we're able to locally.
And hopefully we get that Aussie New Zealand bubble happening fairly shortly as well, because the Australians probably, they're not going to have any other countries that they can sort of go to in the immediate future. So I know that they contribute a lot to our tourism anyway already.
Exactly. I think it's
Is it 30%?
I think it's our number 1 or number 2 source of tourists.
And
I think we are Australia's number 2 to China.
Right.
So we kind of, it's that old Anzac spirit thing, right? We kind of love to mock each other and take the proverbial, but we also take each other a wee bit for granted, I think. And I think the importance of our brotherly support across the ditch becomes even more critical at a time like this. And actually, we will depend on that Aussie tourism dollar as the Aussies come over here when that Tasman bubble opens up.
So what do you think will set us apart then from other countries as far as the recovery goes?
I think it comes down to our resilience as a people. I think we are a very strong, quiet, silent types who just want to get on and do stuff and actually make a difference. I think our ingenuity, and 20 years ago, our ingenuity was around clever things on the farm or gadgets that we might invent. I think our ingenuity has morphed into technology now. So there's some very, very exciting startup tech companies that are doing some very cool things. And so I think our creative spirit and our creative thinking, combined with tech, combined with that number 8 wire determination to just make things happen, and our work ethic. I think Kiwis have a really, really strong work ethic, and in an understated way, we'll just get on and do it. I think all those factors combined mean that we'll just get on and get stuff done. And I think if you combine that with what I was talking about earlier, that spirit of actually supporting one another, and getting into the economy and buying locally made and locally produced things wherever we can, and spending our holiday money on local holidays and going to local restaurants and spending at local bars when they're ready to open, and just behave normally, but support the local economy. I think that combined with a entrepreneurial spirit, innovation, and a resilience will really make a big difference for us.
And obviously, leadership, strong leadership, effective leadership is going to be crucial in recovery. And anyone that's ever worked for you has always spoken so highly of you as a leader. So I thought I'd take this opportunity to ask you, and it's a little bit off subject, but what do you think makes a good leader? What do you think is important? Because it's bloody important if there's poor leadership through this, and I don't just mean in politics. I mean in business. What's your view on leadership?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Early on in my career, when I used to manage and lead people, it was actually, I found it a real pain in the butt, because actually I just wanted to get on and do stuff, and having to spend time talking to people about how they were feeling about things was just felt like unproductive to me. But as I've got older and lost more hair, I've realized that actually that engagement with the people around you, the people that you're working with, is absolutely critical to not only their success, but the organization's success, and ultimately your success. Actually, if you invest the time into growing and fostering the people that are working with you, that'll pay off in spades down the track. So I have a really very simple leadership philosophy that sounds, when I talk about it, it sounds so common sense that you'll think, well, what's the big deal? And it's not a big deal, because it is common sense, but it's actually staggering the number of leaders I've observed who don't have that and don't understand that. So I have three simple rules that I follow, and the first one, and if you remember nothing out of this interview, remember this: that as a leader, the most important thing you can do is be human, and recognize that you're leading people who are having challenges in their life on a daily basis, and everybody has stuff going on. I saw this great graph today that basically said people have this much going on in their lives, about this much. And that's really, really important to recognize that, and to be human, and to actually work with the people who you're working with, firstly and primarily as human beings who are going through all sorts of challenges, and need to be treated and supported respectfully and positively. And then the second point is a bit related to that, and that is, it's the old golden rule, treat others as you would expect to be treated in the same situation. So that's as simple as providing really good feedback when a job's been well done. But it's also pulling people up when they need to retune something or have another crack at something. If that was me and I'd produced something that my boss wasn't happy with, I'd want to know that. I'd want to know that I needed to improve on that, and I needed to make it better. And so these are all related. And the third thing is, because it's all very well to say, well, treat people as you'd like to be treated, and just think it's all, apple pie and fruit salad. You actually need to have hard conversations sometimes, and it's being prepared and comfortable to have hard or challenging conversations. So if you put those three things together, being human first and foremost, treating people around you as you would expect or like to be treated yourself, and not be afraid of having hard conversations, that pretty much covers it. Assuming you've got the technical capability and the understanding of the fundamentals of the job, most people are capable of the job. It's all the human stuff around it that can really make the difference for both the individual and the organisation to truly succeed.
Roger Beaumont, CEO of New Zealand Bankers Association and bloody wonderful friend. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I know that you are so bloody busy at the moment, so very great time. You're a great man.
No worries. No
Thank
worries. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Okay.